blind billionaire walked into a small diner and asked a kind waitress to describe the menu. She had no idea he owned the building, or that his lawyer was about to destroy everything she loved. But when he discovered the truth, what he did next left the entire town in tears. Subscribe now, or this might be our last meeting. Follow, comment, and share to stay connected. Don't miss out. Let's dive in. The afternoon sun bathed the windows of the small maple diner in golden tones. The light was warm, so warm. It painted everything inside with hope. The old wooden tables, the patched leather seats, the white cups lined up on the counter. It was a simple place, very simple, but there was something special there, something that made people feel at home. Clara Evans wiped the counter carefully. She hummed softly as she worked. It was an old song, her father's song. He used to sing it every Sunday morning while making pancakes. The memory made her smile, even though her heart ached. Papa had been gone for 3 years now, 3 long years. But his song stayed with her. They kept her company during the lonely shifts, during the hard days when money ran out, during the nights when her mother coughed and couldn't stop. Clara looked around the diner. Everything was clean. Everything was ready. Mary Lou was in the kitchen, humming along with the radio. The smell of apple pie filled the air, sweet, warm, perfect, just like always. Then the door opened. The little bell above the entrance rang. Ding, ding. Clara looked up. Her breath caught in her throat. A tall man walked in. He was elegant. So elegant. His suit was expensive, anyone could see that. Dark gray, perfectly tailored, with a shine that spoke of money. Real money. But he walked slowly, carefully. In his hand, he held a white cane that tapped gently against the floor. Tap, tap, tap. On his face, dark glasses hid his eyes. He was blind. The entire diner fell silent. Everyone stopped talking. Everyone stopped eating. They all turned to look at the visitor. Who was this man? Why was he here? Rich people never came to Maple Diner. Never. Mary Lou peeked out from the kitchen. Her eyes went wide. She gasped softly and leaned toward Clara. "That's Edward Grant," she whispered, her voice trembling with excitement. "The billionaire, the one who lost his sight." Clara felt her heart skip. Edward Grant. She had heard of him. Everyone had. He owned hotels, big hotels. He had been powerful, very powerful. But then there was an accident, a terrible accident. He lost his vision, and after that, he disappeared. Nobody saw him anymore. He became a ghost, a legend whispered about in coffee shops and beauty salons. And now, he was here, in their small diner. Clara didn't know what to do. Her hands trembled slightly. Should she approach him? Should she wait? What did you say to a man like that? Edward Grant stood near the entrance. He seemed lost, uncertain. His hand gripped the cane tighter. Clara could see the tension in his shoulders. He was afraid of being judged, afraid of being pitied. She knew that feeling. She knew it well. Clara took a deep breath. She wiped her hands on her apron and walked toward him. Her steps were quiet, gentle. "Good afternoon, sir," she said softly. Her voice was warm. "Would you like a table?" Edward turned his head toward her voice. For a moment he said nothing. Then he nodded slowly. "Yes, please." Clara guided him to a table near the window. The golden light fell across it like a blessing. She pulled out a chair for him. He sat down carefully, feeling the edges of the table with his fingers. "Here's the menu," Clara said, placing it in front of him. Edward reached for it. His hands moved across the surface, searching for something. His fingers traced the letters blindly, but of course he couldn't read it. How could he? Clara watched his face. She saw the frustration, the sadness, the loneliness that sat on his shoulders like a heavy coat. Her heart broke. It just broke. This man had everything: money, power, expensive clothes. But he had nothing, nothing at all. "Can I help?" Clara asked gently. Edward froze. His jaw tightened. For a second she thought he would refuse. Proud men always refused. But then something shifted. His shoulders relaxed. He let out a slow breath. "Yes," he said quietly. "Please." Clara smiled. She pulled up a chair and sat beside him. The whole diner was still watching. Everyone wanted to know what would happen. But Clara didn't care. She only cared about this man. This lonely, broken man who needed kindness. "We have roasted chicken today," she began. Her voice was soft, sweet, like honey. "It's Mary Lou's special recipe. It tastes like Sunday lunch, the kind your grandmother makes, warm and comforting. It comes with mashed potatoes that melt in your mouth. Edward listened, really listened. His face softened. And there's meatloaf, Clara continued, thick and juicy with a tomato glaze on top. It's hearty, the kind of food that sticks to your ribs and makes you feel strong. And dessert? Edward asked. His voice was different now, lighter, almost hopeful. Apple pie, Clara said, her smile growing. Fresh from the oven, the crust is golden and flaky, and the filling, oh, the filling tastes like a hug, like home, like everything good in the world. Edward smiled. He smiled. It was small, just a tiny curve of his lips, but it was real, so real. Clara felt warmth spread through her chest. When was the last time this man had smiled? When was the last time anyone had treated him like a person, not like a tragedy? I'll have the chicken, Edward said. And the pie. Perfect choice, Clara said, standing up. She squeezed his shoulder gently before walking away. Mary Lou was crying behind the counter. Actually crying. Tears ran down her round, kind face. She pressed a dish towel to her mouth and shook her head in wonder. Did you see that? She whispered to Clara. Did you see him smile? Clara nodded. Her own eyes were wet with tears. The entire diner seemed to exhale. People started talking again, but their voices were softer now, gentler. Something had changed. Something beautiful had happened. A light had been turned on in the darkness. A lonely man had been seen, really seen, and it was all because of one simple act of kindness. Clara brought the food to Edward's table. She described where everything was on the plate. Chicken at 12 o'clock, potatoes at 3, vegetables at 9. He thanked her quietly. As he ate, she watched from across the room. He ate slowly, carefully, but there was peace on his face now, peace where there had only been pain before. When he finished, Clara brought the apple pie. She set it down gently. This is the best part, she said with a smile. Edward took a bite. He chewed slowly, and then he smiled again. That beautiful, rare smile. You were right, he said. It does taste like a hug. Clara laughed softly. I'm glad. When Edward stood to leave, the entire diner watched again. But this time, it was different. This time, they weren't curious. They were moved, deeply moved. Edward walked to the door. Tap, tap, tap. His cane found the way. But before he left, he turned back. Thank you, he said. His voice was thick with emotion. Thank you for treating me like a person. Clara's throat tightened. You are a person, sir. A wonderful person. Edward nodded. He couldn't speak anymore. If he did, he would cry. And he hadn't cried in years. Not since the accident. Not since he lost everything. The door closed behind him. The bell rang. Ding, ding. Mary Lou rushed over to Clara and grabbed her hands. You did something beautiful today, honey, she said, tears streaming down her face. You gave that man his dignity back. You made him feel human again. Clara smiled, but she didn't feel proud. She just felt grateful. Grateful that she could help. Grateful that God had put her in the right place at the right time. Outside, the sun was setting. The golden light faded into soft purple and pink. The day was ending, but something new was beginning. Something neither Clara nor Edward understood yet. A miracle was starting. A small, beautiful miracle that would change everything. The next day, the door of Maple Diner opened again. Ding, ding. The little bell rang cheerfully. Clara looked up from wiping down a table. Her heart jumped. It was him, Edward Grant. He stood in the doorway with his white cane and dark glasses. His suit today was gray, perfectly tailored, expensive, but he looked different, less tense, less closed off. Clara smiled. She recognized him immediately, not by his face, but by the sound, that gentle tap, tap, tap of his cane, that careful way he moved. She would know that sound anywhere now. Good afternoon, sir, she said warmly, walking toward him. Edward turned toward her voice, and he smiled. Actually smiled, right away. Good afternoon, Clara. Her name. He remembered her name. Clara felt her cheeks grow warm. Did you forget something yesterday? She asked gently. Edward hesitated. He shifted his weight. For a moment he looked embarrassed, like a shy schoolboy. This powerful billionaire looked nervous. Maybe, he said quietly. Maybe I forgot. The sound of your voice. Clara froze. Her breath caught. What did that mean? She didn't know. but her heart fluttered like a bird in her chest. She laughed softly, not to make fun, but because she didn't know what else to do. Edward laughed too, a quiet, gentle laugh. It was awkward, beautiful, real. Something invisible passed between them, a connection, a thread that pulled them together without words. "Well then," Clara said, recovering her composure, "let me get you a table." She led him to the same spot by the window. He sat down carefully. She brought him the menu, but this time she just started reading it out loud. No need to ask, they both knew. As she described the daily specials, pot roast, chicken soup, cornbread, the door opened again. Ding, ding. Clara looked up. Her face lit up with pure joy. "Lucy!" A little girl walked in. She was small, 9 years old. She wore a yellow dress with white flowers. Her hair was in 2 braids. But what made everyone turn to look was the dog beside her, a beautiful golden retriever with a service vest, and the little white cane in her tiny hand. Lucy was blind, too. "Hi, Miss Clara," Lucy called out happily. Her voice was bright, full of sunshine. "Hi, sweetheart." Clara rushed over and hugged her. Come in. Your usual table?" "Yes, please." Edward heard it all. He heard the little bell on the door. He heard the dog's paws on the floor. He heard the tap, tap, tap of a small cane. His chest tightened. A child, a blind child, just like him. Clara guided Lucy to a table near Edward. The little girl sat down happily. Her dog, whose name was Buddy, lay down beside her chair. "Lucy," Clara said gently, "there's someone here I'd like you to meet." Lucy turned her face toward Clara's voice. "Who?" "This is Mr. Edward Grant," Clara said. He's like you." Lucy's face brightened even more. "You can't see either?" Edward swallowed hard. "No," he said quietly. "I can't." "That's okay," Lucy said cheerfully. "I can't see either, but I can hear really well, and smell things. Did you know the apple pie here smells like happiness?" Edward smiled. He couldn't help it. This little girl was so full of light, so full of life. How did she do it? How was she not angry, not bitter? "I didn't know that," Edward said, "but I believe you." Clara pulled up a chair between them. She had an idea, a beautiful idea. "Lucy," she said, "tell Mr. Grant about your favorite things." "Oh," Lucy clapped her hands. "Okay, my favorite thing is when it rains, because I can hear every single drop. Plink, 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 and I can smell the earth waking up. It smells like hope." Edward listened. His throat grew tight. "And I love flowers," Lucy continued, "not because of how they look, but because of how they feel. Roses are soft, daisies are tickly, and sunflowers. Oh, sunflowers are big and strong like they're giving you a hug." Clara watched Edward's face. She saw the emotion there, the pain, the wonder. "And sounds," Lucy went on. "I love sounds, like Buddy's tail wagging. Thump, 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 or Miss Clara's laugh. It sounds like bells, pretty bells." "Lucy," Edward said slowly, "aren't you ever sad about not seeing?" Lucy tilted her head. She thought about it, really thought. "Sometimes," she admitted, "sometimes I cry, because I want to see my mama's face, or the sky, or colors." She paused. "But then I remember something." "What?" Edward asked. "We don't need eyes to see beauty," Lucy said simply. "We just need hearts, and my heart sees all the time. It sees love. It sees kindness. It sees God." The silence that followed was thick, heavy, full of meaning. Edward couldn't speak. If he tried, he would cry. This little girl, this wise, beautiful little girl, had just said what he needed to hear. What he had needed to hear for years. Clara wiped her eyes. She was crying. Mary Lou was crying in the kitchen. Even the old man at the corner table was wiping his face with a napkin. "Lucy," Edward finally said, his voice breaking, "you are remarkable." "Thank you," Lucy said happily. "You're nice. I can tell by your voice. You have a sad voice, but it's getting happier." Edward smiled through his tears. Yes, I think it is." They talked for a while longer. About music, about favorite foods, about courage. Lucy told him about her school, about learning Braille, about Buddy, her best friend in the whole world. Edward told her about his life, not the business part, not the money, but the real part, the lonely part, the scared part. And Clara sat between them, facilitating, connecting, loving them both. When it was time to go, Edward stood up. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. He left money on the table, more than enough for the meal. But he also left something else. A note, folded carefully. Clara picked it up after he left. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside, in careful handwriting that must have taken him forever to write, were 4 words. "Thank you for making me see." Clara pressed the note to her chest. Tears ran down her face. She didn't understand everything that was happening, but she knew it was important. Sacred even. She folded the note carefully and put it in her apron pocket, right over her heart, like a promise, like a prayer. Outside, Edward walked slowly to his car. His driver opened the door, but before getting in, Edward stopped. He turned his face toward the diner. He couldn't see it, but he could feel it. For the first time in 3 years, Edward Grant felt something other than darkness. He felt hope. Night fell over Maplewood like a heavy blanket. The streetlights flickered on one by one, casting yellow pools of light on the empty sidewalks. Clara walked home slowly. Her feet hurt. Her back ached, but she smiled anyway. She always smiled. The tips today had been good. Not great, but good enough. Maybe enough to buy Mama's medicine. Maybe. Clara climbed the steps to their small apartment. The building was old. Very old. The paint was peeling. The stairs creaked. But it was home. It was all they had. She opened the door quietly. "Mama, I'm home." Then she heard it. That sound. That terrible, awful sound that made her heart stop every single time. Coughing. Clara dropped her purse and ran into the living room. Her mother was on the sofa, doubled over, coughing so hard her whole body shook. The sound was wet, rattling, wrong. "Mama!" Clara knelt beside her, rubbing her back. "Mama, breathe. Just breathe." Her mother's face was pale, so pale. Her lips had a bluish tint. She gasped for air between coughs, her thin chest heaving with effort. Finally, the coughing stopped. Her mother collapsed back against the cushions, exhausted, completely exhausted. "I'm okay," she whispered. But she wasn't okay. They both knew it. Clara's hands trembled as she reached for the medicine bottle on the side table. She picked it up, shook it. Her heart sank. Empty. The bottle was empty. "Mama, why didn't you tell me?" Clara's voice cracked. "I would have gotten more." "We don't have money for more, baby," her mother said softly. "The rent is late. The electric bill is overdue. We need food more than we need medicine." "No." Clara shook her head. Tears filled her eyes. "No, Mama. We need you. I need you." Her mother reached out with a shaking hand and touched Clara's face. "God will provide, sweetheart. He always does." Clara wanted to believe that. She really did. But right now, sitting in their dark apartment with an empty medicine bottle and bills stacked on the kitchen table, it was hard. So hard. She looked around the room. Everything was old. The furniture was donated from the church. The curtains were sewn from old bed sheets. On the wall there was only one nice thing, a framed photograph. Clara's eyes moved to it. Her heart squeezed. The photograph showed a man sitting at a piano. He was young, handsome. His smile was wide and bright. His hands were frozen mid-song, dancing across the keys. Behind him you could see the interior of a restaurant, the Maple Diner. "Papa." Clara stood up and walked to the photograph. She touched the frame gently, lovingly. "Hi, Papa," she whispered. Her father had been the original owner of Maple Diner. He had bought it with his life savings 20 years ago. It was his dream, his passion. Every morning, he would open the restaurant at 5 a.m. Every night, he would close it at 9. And every Sunday afternoon, he would play the piano for the customers. Jazz, blues, gospel, whatever made people smile. Clara had learned to play by sitting beside him. He would guide her small hands across the keys. "Feel the music, Clara Bear," he would say. "Don't think it. Feel it." Those were the happiest days of her life. But then it all fell apart. The economy crashed. Business slowed down. Papa took out loans to keep the restaurant open. Big loans. Loans he couldn't pay back. The bank came. They took everything. The restaurant. The house. Everything. The day they lost the diner, Papa had a heart attack. Right there. Right in the middle of the restaurant he loved so much. He collapsed by the piano. Clara was holding his hand when he died. She was only 17. Clara closed her eyes. The memory still hurt. It hurt so much. After that day, she never played piano again. Never. She couldn't. Every time she thought about music, she thought about Papa. And thinking about Papa meant thinking about how he died, how she couldn't save him, how she failed. "I'm sorry, Papa," she whispered to the photograph. "I'm so sorry." Behind her, her mother coughed again. Clara wiped her eyes and turned around. No time for tears, no time for memories. She had to be strong. "I'll get your medicine tomorrow, Mama," Clara said firmly. "I promise." Her mother smiled weakly. "You're a good girl, Clara. The best." But Clara didn't feel good. She felt scared, tired, lost. She helped her mother to bed, brought her water, and tucked the blankets around her thin body. Then she sat on the edge of the bed and prayed like she hadn't prayed in years. "Please, God," she whispered, "please help us. Please." Across town, in a mansion so big it could fit 50 apartments like Clara's, Edward Grant woke up. He hadn't been sleeping. Not really. He never slept well anymore. How could he? In the darkness of his blindness, sleep and waking felt the same. Edward sat up in his enormous bed. The sheets were silk, Egyptian cotton, expensive, but they felt cold, empty. He was alone, completely alone. His wife had left him after the accident. She said she couldn't handle it, couldn't handle being married to a blind man. She took half his money and married someone else, someone who could see, someone whole. Edward didn't blame her. Not really. Who wanted to be tied to darkness? He stood up and made his way across the room. His hands traced the familiar path, dresser, chair, doorframe. He knew every inch of this house, but knowing didn't make it feel like home. He walked downstairs. His bare feet were silent on the marble floors. The house was so quiet, too quiet. It felt like a tomb. Edward found himself in the living room. He stopped. His hand touched something smooth, cold. He knew what it was. The piano. It had been his wife's. She used to play beautifully. But after she left, Edward closed the lid. He never opened it again. What was the point? Music was for people who could see the notes, for people who had something to celebrate. But tonight, something made him stop. Something made him open the lid. The hinges creaked. Edward ran his fingers over the keys. They were dusty, untouched for 3 years. He pressed one key, middle C. The note rang out in the silent house, but it sounded wrong, empty, cold. Edward pulled his hand back like he'd been burned. What was he thinking? He couldn't play. He couldn't do anything anymore. Behind him, a voice spoke. "Working late, Mr. Grant?" Edward turned. "Peter, what are you doing here?" Peter Walsh, his lawyer, walked into the room. His shoes clicked on the marble. Click, click, click. He was always so polished, so smooth. Edward couldn't see him, but he could feel him. Smell his expensive cologne. Hear the false friendliness in his voice. "I brought some documents for you to review," Peter said. "Important matters?" Edward sighed. "It's late, Peter." "Business doesn't sleep, sir." Peter set a briefcase down on the table. The sound echoed. "I've been reviewing your properties. There are several that are unproductive, losing money. It's time to sell." Edward's jaw tightened. "Such as?" "Small commercial properties, old buildings in dying neighborhoods." Papers rustled. "There's a restaurant, Maple Diner, worthless property. I've already found a buyer willing to demolish it and build condos." Maple Diner. Edward's breath caught. He saw Clara's face in his mind. No, not saw. He felt it, felt her warmth, heard her voice describing the apple pie. "It tastes like a hug." "That one," Edward said slowly. "Leave it for later." Peter paused. "Sir?" "I said leave it." Edward's voice was firm. "We'll discuss the others, but not that one. Not yet." Peter was silent for a long moment. Edward could feel his displeasure, his confusion. "As you wish," Peter finally said. His voice was tight, controlled. "But I must advise you, sir. Sentiment is bad for business." Edward didn't answer. He didn't know why he was protecting that little diner. He didn't understand it himself, but something in him said no, not yet, not that place. Peter gathered his papers. "I'll return tomorrow with revised proposals. Good night, Mr. Grant." "Good night." The lawyer left. Click, click, click. The front door closed. Edward stood alone in the dark living room. His hand reached out and touched the piano keys again. This time he didn't play. He just rested his fingers there. And for some reason he couldn't explain. He thought of Clara, of Lucy, of a little diner with golden light and apple pie. He thought of voices that made him feel human again. "What's happening to me?" he whispered to the empty room. No one answered. But somewhere deep inside, Something was waking up, something he thought had died with his sight. Hope. Peter Walsh sat in his car outside Edward Grant's mansion. His hands gripped the steering wheel. Hard. So hard his knuckles turned white. He was furious. Absolutely furious. But his face showed nothing. Years of being a lawyer had taught him that. Never show your real feelings. Never let them see you angry. Smile. Always smile. Even when you want to scream. Peter forced himself to breathe. To think. Edward was being irrational. Sentimental. That stupid diner meant nothing. It was just an old building in a failing neighborhood. The land was worth more empty than with that pathetic restaurant on it. But Edward said no. Peter's jaw clenched. Fine. If Edward wouldn't sign off on the sale, Peter would find another way. He always did. That's why he was good at his job. He got things done. No matter what. He started the car and drove away into the night. Already his mind was working. Planning. Scheming. There were ways around Edward. Loopholes. Forged signatures. Peter had done it before. Edward was blind. He couldn't read the documents anyway. He just trusted Peter to read them to him. And trust was such a foolish thing. Peter smiled to himself. Yes, he would handle this. The diner would be sold. The deal would go through. And Peter would get his commission. A very large commission. That diner is as good as gone, he murmured. The next morning, Clara arrived at Maple Diner early. The sun was just beginning to rise, painting the sky pink and orange. She unlocked the door and went inside. The familiar smell greeted her. Coffee, cinnamon, old wood. Home. She turned on the lights and started preparing for the day. Wiping tables. Brewing coffee. Setting out the sugar and cream. On the counter sat a stack of envelopes. Bills. Clara's stomach twisted. She picked them up and flipped through them. Electric bill, water bill, supplier invoice, rent notice, past due. She closed her eyes. How were they going to pay all this? Mary Lou was doing her best, but the diner barely made enough to cover costs. Tips were Clara's only income. And it wasn't enough. It was never enough. God, please, she whispered. Please help us. The door opened. Ding, ding. Clara looked up, pasting on a smile. But it was only Lucy. Sweet little Lucy with Buddy at her side. Good morning, Miss Clara, Lucy called out cheerfully. Good morning, sweetheart. Clara came around the counter and hugged her. You're here early today. Mama had to go to work early, so she dropped me off. Lucy reached into her backpack. I made something for you. She pulled out a piece of paper. A drawing. Clara took it carefully. It was made with crayons, bright, cheerful colors. Yellow, orange, pink. In the center was a house, and all around it were rays of light, like the sun was shining right on it. It's a house full of light, Lucy explained proudly. That's what I think of when I come here. This place is full of light. Clara's throat tightened. Tears pricked her eyes. This precious child. How did she see so much beauty when she couldn't see it all? It's beautiful, Lucy, Clara whispered. The most beautiful thing I've ever seen. She taped the drawing on the wall behind the counter, right next to her father's photograph. A house full of light. Yes, that's what this place was, or what it used to be. Mary Lou came out from the kitchen. She saw the drawing and smiled. That little girl has more faith than all of us combined, Mary Lou said, wrapping an arm around Clara. You know what I always say, honey? What's that? Kindness always comes back, always. Mary Lou squeezed her shoulder. You've been so good to that child, to everyone. God sees that. He's going to take care of you. Clara wanted to believe it. She really did. But looking at the stack of bills, it was hard. Still, she smiled. I hope you're right, Mary Lou. Across town, Peter Walsh sat in his luxurious office. Leather chairs, mahogany desk, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Everything screamed success, power, money. Peter opened his briefcase and pulled out documents. Legal documents, property deeds, contracts. He laid out the papers for the Maple Diner sale. Then he pulled out a different set. Blank contracts, forgeries. His hand hovered over Edward's signature stamp. It would be so easy. Just one stamp, one signature. The deal would be done. The building would be sold, demolished, gone. Peter picked up the stamp. Just business. He muttered to himself. Nothing personal. He pressed the stamp onto the paper. Edward Grant's signature appeared. Perfect, official, fake. Peter smiled. He had done this many times before. Edward was too trusting, too distracted, too blind, literally, to notice what was happening under his own nose. Goodbye, Maple Diner, Peter said softly. It was nice knowing you. Back at the mansion, Edward sat in his study. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Something was off. He heard footsteps. His butler, James, entered the room. Can I get you anything, sir? James asked. No, thank you, James. James hesitated. Sir, if I may speak freely. Of course. Be careful with Mr. Walsh, James said quietly. Be very careful. Edward frowned. What do you mean? I've worked for you for 15 years, sir. I know people. And that man, James paused. He reads contracts in the dark, if you understand my meaning. Edward's chest tightened. You think he's dishonest? I think he sees opportunity where you see loyalty. The words hung in the air like a warning, like a storm cloud gathering. Edward nodded slowly. Thank you, James. I'll be careful. But even as he said it, Edward wondered if it was already too late. Somewhere in Maplewood, a storm was coming. A storm of lies and betrayal and greed. And Clara, sweet Clara, who just wanted to save her mother and keep the lights on, had no idea her world was about to be torn apart. Rain fell over Maplewood like tears from heaven. It was late, very late. The streets were empty and dark. The only sound was the rain, tap, 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 hitting the pavement, the rooftops, the windows. Inside Maple Diner, Clara was closing up for the night. She counted the money in the cash register. Not much, never much, but enough for tomorrow, enough to keep going one more day. She sighed and locked the register. Her body ached, her feet hurt. She was so tired, so very tired. Then she heard it. A car pulling up outside. Through the rain-streaked windows she saw headlights. A door opening. The tap-tap-tap of a cane. Clara's heart jumped. The door opened. Ding-ding. Rain blew in with the wind. And there he was, Edward Grant. He stood in the doorway, soaking wet. His expensive suit was drenched. Water dripped from his hair. His dark glasses were spotted with rain. But he didn't seem to care. Mr. Grant! Clara rushed over. You're soaked! Come in, come in! Edward stepped inside. He was breathing hard, like he had been running, or like he was nervous, very nervous. I'm sorry, he said. His voice was rough, emotional. I know it's late. I know you're closing. But I had to come. Clara grabbed a clean towel from behind the counter and gently draped it over his shoulders. It's okay. It's okay. Here, sit down. She guided him to a table near the old piano in the corner. Edward sat down heavily. His hands were shaking. Why did you come? Clara asked softly. In this rain? So late? Edward was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke. His voice was barely a whisper. I wanted to hear your voice again. Clara's breath caught. Her heart hammered in her chest. What? What did that mean? Your voice, Edward continued. It's the only thing that makes the darkness feel less dark. Tears sprang to Clara's eyes. Oh, this man. This lonely, broken, beautiful man. Let me make you some tea, she said, her voice thick with emotion. She went to the kitchen and put the kettle on. Her hands trembled as she prepared the tea. What was happening? Why did she feel this way? Like her heart was opening after being closed for so long. She brought the tea back to the table and sat across from him. Steam rose from the cups, curling in the air like prayers. Thank you, Edward said. He wrapped his hands around the warm cup. They sat in silence for a moment, just listening to the rain. It was peaceful, comfortable, like they had known each other forever. Mr. Grant, Edward, he interrupted gently. Please, call me Edward. Clara smiled. Edward, can I ask you something? Anything. Do you like music? Edward's face changed. Something sad passed over it. I used to. Before the accident. My wife played piano. Beautifully. But after she left, I closed the piano. I haven't heard music in 3 years. Clara's heart broke. 3 years. 3 years without music. How did someone live like that? My father loved music, Clara said softly. He used to say that playing piano was like talking to God, that every note was a prayer, every song was a conversation with heaven. Edward lifted his face toward her. He sounds like a wise man. He was. Clara's voice cracked. He owned this diner. This was his dream. And every Sunday he would play the piano right over there. She pointed, then remembered he couldn't see. There's an old upright piano in the corner. It's out of tune now. Nobody plays it anymore. Why not? Clara swallowed hard. Because when he died, I couldn't. I just couldn't. Edward reached across the table. His hand found hers. He squeezed it gently. "Describe the sound to me," he said. "Please. Describe what it was like when your father played." Clara closed her eyes. The memories flooded back. Sweet memories. Painful memories. "It was like sunshine," she began. "Warm and bright. When he played jazz, it was happy. It made you want to dance. When he played blues, it was sad but beautiful, like crying but feeling better afterwards. And when he played gospel," she paused. "When he played gospel, it felt like the whole room filled with light, like God himself was listening." Edward's grip on her hand tightened. "Would you play for me?" he whispered. "Please?" Clara froze. Her heart pounded. No, she couldn't. She hadn't touched that piano in years, not since Papa died. But then she looked at Edward, really looked at him. She saw the loneliness, the hunger, the desperate need for something beautiful in his darkness, and she couldn't say no. "Okay," she whispered. Clara stood up. Her legs felt weak. She walked slowly to the piano in the corner. It was covered with dust. She wiped the keys with her apron. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely lift the lid. She sat down on the bench. It creaked, the same creak it had made when she was 7 years old, sitting next to Papa. "Hi, Papa," she whispered. "It's me. I'm going to play now. I hope that's okay." She placed her fingers on the keys. They felt strange, unfamiliar, like touching a ghost. Clara took a deep breath, and then she played. The first note rang out, clear, pure, beautiful, and then the second, and the third. The melody was simple. It was Amazing Grace, Papa's favorite, the song he played every Sunday morning. The notes flowed from Clara's fingers like water, like light, like something holy. The piano was out of tune. Some keys stuck, but it didn't matter. The music was alive, so alive. Clara's eyes filled with tears. She couldn't see the keys anymore, but she didn't need to. Her hands remembered. Her heart remembered. The music filled the diner. It floated through the air, touching everything. The tables, the chairs, the walls. The rain outside seemed to quiet, as if listening. Edward sat perfectly still. Tears ran down his face. He didn't bother to wipe them away. He just listened, really listened. This was the most beautiful thing he had heard in 3 years. 3 long, dark, silent years. The music wasn't just sound. It was healing. It was redemption. It was God reaching down and saying, "You are not forgotten. You are not alone." Edward wept. Not from sadness, not from pity, but from something deeper. Something he had lost and was just now finding again. Hope. In the kitchen doorway, Mary Lou stood hidden in the shadows. She pressed a dish towel to her mouth. Tears streamed down her round face. She had prayed for this moment, prayed that Clara would play again, prayed that her girl would heal, and now it was happening, right before her eyes. "Thank you, Jesus," Mary Lou whispered. "Thank you." The song continued, slow, gentle, healing. The whole diner seemed to come alive. The golden light from the lamps seemed brighter, warmer. The rain outside sounded softer. Even the old building itself seemed to sigh with relief. This place had been hurting, missing the music, missing the joy, and now it was back, finally back. When Clara played the last note, silence fell. A sacred silence, the kind that follows a miracle. Clara sat frozen at the piano, her hands still on the keys. She couldn't believe it. She had played. After all these years, she had played. "Papa," she whispered, "I did it. I finally did it." "Clara." Edward's voice was rough with emotion. That was... He couldn't finish. He stood up and walked toward the piano. His cane tapped gently. Tap, tap, tap. He found the piano bench and sat down beside her. "Thank you," he said. Tears still ran down his face. "Thank you for giving me that gift." Clara turned to him. "No, thank you. You gave me something back that I thought I'd lost forever." They sat there together, side by side on the piano bench. 2 broken people who had just found something whole. Outside, the rain stopped. The clouds parted, and through the window, a single ray of moonlight streamed in, illuminating them both. For the first time in years, Edward Grant believed in miracles, and Clara Evans remembered what joy felt like. The next morning, Peter Walsh arrived at Edward's mansion with a briefcase full of lies. He knocked on the study door. "Mr. Grant, I have those documents ready for your signature." "Come in," Edward called. Peter entered, all fake smiles and false friendliness. "Good morning, sir. You seem different today, almost happy." Edward was sitting by the window. He did seem different, lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted. "I had a good evening," Edward said simply. "Wonderful." Peter set his briefcase on the desk. Click, click. "Well, let's take care of business so you can enjoy your day." He pulled out a stack of papers. They looked official, professional, covered in legal language and impressive stamps. "These are the property transfers we discussed," Peter said smoothly. "Just routine paperwork, transferring some unproductive assets. Nothing major." Edward frowned. "I thought I told you to hold off on the Maple Diner." "Oh, this isn't about that little restaurant." Peter lied easily. "These are other properties. Industrial lots, warehouses, things you don't need." Edward hesitated. Something felt wrong, but he couldn't put his finger on what. "James?" he called. The butler appeared immediately. "Yes, sir? Could you review these documents for me?" Peter's jaw tightened. He forced a smile. "Sir, with all due respect, I'm your lawyer. You hired me to handle these matters. Do you not trust me?" Edward paused. Did he trust Peter? James's warning echoed in his mind. He reads contracts in the dark, but Peter had been his lawyer for 5 years. 5 years. Surely he was trustworthy. "It's fine, James," Edward said finally. "Thank you." James left reluctantly. Peter smiled wider. "Where do I sign?" Edward asked. "Right here, sir." Peter guided Edward's hand to the signature line. "And here, and here." Edward signed. His hand moved across the paper, forming his name in practiced strokes. He signed 3 documents. 4, 5. He didn't know that one of them was a sale contract for Maple Diner to a demolition company, effective immediately. "All done," Peter said cheerfully, gathering the papers. "I'll file these right away." "Thank you, Peter." "My pleasure, sir. Always my pleasure." Peter left the mansion with a smile on his face and a fortune in his pocket. The commission from the Maple Diner sale would be enormous. Enough to buy that condo in Miami he'd been eyeing. "Stupid, trusting fool," Peter muttered as he drove away. Should have read the fine print. 3 hours later, Clara arrived at Maple Diner for her shift. She was humming. Actually humming. For the first time in years, she felt light. Happy. Last night had changed something in her. Something beautiful. She opened the door. Ding, ding. But the sound that greeted her wasn't cheerful morning chatter. It was crying. Mary Lou sat at the counter, sobbing. Her face was red and puffy. Tears streamed down her cheeks. In her hands was a piece of paper. "Mary Lou!" Clara rushed over. "What's wrong? What happened?" Mary Lou looked up. Her eyes were devastated. Completely devastated. "They're going to demolish the diner," she sobbed. "It's been sold, Clara. We're losing everything." Clara felt the floor disappear beneath her feet. "What? What did she say? Sold? But how? You own this place." "No." Mary Lou shook her head. "I only rent it. The building is owned by someone else, and they sold it. There's a demolition notice. We have 30 days to vacate." Clara's hands went numb. 30 days? 30 days? "But who?" Clara's voice came out as a whisper. "Who sold it?" Mary Lou handed her the paper. Clara's hands shook as she read it. "Property sale finalized. Owner, Grant Holdings, LLC. Buyer, Riverside Development Corporation. Purpose, demolition and redevelopment. Grant Holdings, Edward Grant." Clara's heart stopped. No, it couldn't be. "The blind man," Mary Lou said through her tears. "The one you were so kind to. His company owns this building, and he sold it, Clara. He sold it." The paper fell from Clara's hands. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Edward? Edward had done this? The man she had played piano for last night? The man who cried when she played Amazing Grace? The man who said her voice made the darkness less dark? He was destroying her home? "No," Clara whispered. "No, there must be a mistake." But there was no mistake. The documents were official, legal, final. Outside, people started gathering. The news had spread fast, too fast. In a small town like Maplewood, bad news traveled like wildfire. Mrs. Henderson from the bookstore, old Tom from the barber shop, Sarah with her twin babies. They all came. They all stared at the demolition notice taped to the window. "They're tearing down Maple Diner. But this place has been here for 30 years. Where will we go for coffee?" The door burst open. Lucy ran in, crying. Buddy followed, whining softly. Miss Clara, Lucy sobbed. Is it true? Are they going to tear down the House of Light? Clara knelt down and pulled the little girl into her arms. Oh, Lucy. Oh, sweetheart. But why? Lucy cried. Why would anyone destroy something so beautiful? Clara had no answer. She just held the child and cried with her. At that same moment, in his mansion, Edward sat in his study. James entered quietly. Sir, there's something you need to know. What is it? The Maple Diner, sir. It's been sold. For demolition. The paperwork you signed yesterday included a sale contract. Edward's blood turned to ice. What? Mr. Walsh deceived you, sir. The diner is scheduled to be torn down in 30 days. Edward stood up so fast his chair fell over. No, I never authorized that. I specifically told him to leave that property alone. I'm afraid he acted against your wishes, sir. Edward's hands clenched into fists. Rage, pure rage flooded through him, and something worse than rage. Guilt. Clara, he whispered. Oh God, Clara. He had destroyed her home, her father's restaurant, the place where she played piano, the place that gave her joy. He had destroyed it, and he hadn't even known he was doing it. The diner was sold in my name, Edward roared. Using my signature? Yes, sir. Edward felt sick. He felt like he was falling into darkness deeper than blindness. This was his fault. His fault. He was too trusting, too distracted, too stupid. The blindness wasn't just in his eyes anymore. It was in his heart, in his judgment, in everything. Get me Peter Walsh, Edward said, his voice cold as ice. Now. Yes, sir. But even as James left, Edward knew the damage was done. The papers were signed. The sale was final. The building would come down. And Clara, sweet, kind, beautiful Clara, would hate him forever. He had finally learned to see again, finally found light in the darkness. And now he had destroyed it with his own hands. Edward Grant didn't sleep that night. How could he? Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Clara's face. No, he couldn't see it, but he felt it. He felt her kindness, her warmth, her voice describing apple pie like it was a hug, and he had destroyed her home. The morning came slowly. Edward sat in his study, his jaw tight with determination. He had made a decision, a clear decision. He was going to the Maple Diner, today, right now. James, he called out. The butler appeared immediately. Yes, sir? Prepare the car. I'm going to Maplewood. Very good, sir. Edward stood and reached for his cane. His hand was steady. His heart was not. But he had to do this. He had to see Clara, had to explain, had to fix this terrible, terrible mistake. He heard rapid footsteps in the hallway. Peter Walsh burst into the study, breathing hard. Mr. Grant, I heard you're planning to go somewhere. Where are you going? Edward's face was cold, hard. That's none of your concern, Peter. But, sir, you have meetings today. Important calls. You can't just... I said it's none of your concern. Edward's voice was ice, pure ice. Peter's face paled. He knew. He knew Edward suspected something. Sir, I really must insist. Get out of my way, Peter. Edward walked past him. His cane tapped firmly on the marble floor. Tap, tap, tap. Each step was determined, purposeful. Peter stood frozen, watching him go. Panic rose in his chest. If Edward went to that diner, if he talked to those people, everything would unravel. Sir, please, Peter called after him. You're making a mistake. But Edward didn't stop. He didn't even pause. James was already waiting with the car door open. To Maple Diner, Edward said as he climbed in. Yes, sir. The car pulled away, leaving Peter standing on the mansion steps, his face twisted with worry and rage. The drive to Maplewood seemed to take forever. Edward sat in the back seat, his hands gripping his cane. His heart pounded. What would he say to Clara? How could he explain? How could he make this right? As they got closer to the diner, Edward heard something. Something faint but unmistakable. Music. Piano music. His breath caught. Stop the car. Sir? Stop the car, now. The driver pulled over. Edward opened the door and stepped out. The music was clearer now. Sad. So incredibly sad. It floated through the air like a prayer made of tears. It was Clara. It had to be Clara. Edward started walking. His cane tapped quickly. Tap, 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 tap. He followed the sound. It pulled him forward like a rope tied to his heart. The music grew louder. He could hear it clearly now. The melody was slow, mournful. It was Amazing Grace again, but this time it sounded different. This time it sounded like goodbye. Edward reached the diner. The door was unlocked. He pushed it open gently. The little bell rang, ding ding, but Clara didn't stop playing. Maybe she didn't hear it, or maybe she just didn't care. Edward stepped inside. The music wrapped around him. It filled the entire space, every corner, every shadow. It was beautiful and heartbreaking. He stood there listening. Tears ran down his face behind his dark glasses. He didn't wipe them away. He just listened. Finally, the song ended. Silence fell. "Why are you playing so sadly?" Edward asked quietly. Clara's hands froze on the keys. She knew that voice, that deep, gentle voice. She turned around slowly. Edward Grant stood in the doorway, tall, elegant, blind, the man who had destroyed everything. "You," Clara whispered. Her voice was cold, so cold. "You came here." "I had to," Edward said. "I had to explain." "Explain what?" Clara stood up. Her hands were shaking. "Explain how you smiled at me, how you cried when I played for you, how you made me believe there was still goodness in the world, and then you destroyed my home." "Clara, please. I didn't know." "Didn't know?" Her voice broke. Tears streamed down her face. "This place is all I have. This diner is my father's legacy. It's the last piece of him I have left, and you're tearing it down like it's nothing." Edward flinched. Each word hit him like a knife. "I didn't mean to. I was tricked. My lawyer forged the papers." "I don't care about your lawyer," Clara cried. "I don't care about your excuses. This place is my life, and you're taking it away." She collapsed back onto the piano bench, sobbing. Her whole body shook with the force of her tears. Edward's heart shattered, completely shattered. He walked slowly toward her. His cane tapped softly. Tap, tap, tap. "Why are you playing so sadly?" he asked again, his voice barely a whisper. Clara looked up at him. Her face was wet with tears. "Because they're taking away the last place that still felt like home." Edward closed his eyes. The pain in her voice was unbearable. Unbearable. "Clara," he said slowly, "who owned this restaurant before Mary Lou?" Clara wiped her face with trembling hands. "Why does it matter? Please, tell me." "My father," she said. Her voice cracked. "My father owned it. He built it from nothing. It was his dream. And when he died, we lost it. The bank took it. We couldn't afford to keep it." Edward's chest tightened. "Oh God. Oh God. What was your father's name?" "Thomas Evans." Thomas Evans. Edward's mind raced. That name. He knew that name. "When did he buy this building?" Edward asked urgently. 30 years ago, with a partner. But the partnership ended before I was born. I never knew who the partner was." Edward's breath stopped. No, it couldn't be. "My father," Edward said slowly, "was named William Grant. 30 years ago, he invested in a small restaurant in Maplewood with a man named Thomas Evans." Silence. Complete, absolute silence. Clara stared at Edward. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. "This diner," Edward continued, his voice shaking, "was built by our fathers. Together. Your father's dream was my father's dream too." Clara couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The room spun around her. "That means," she whispered, "that means this isn't coincidence," Edward said. His voice was thick with emotion. "That means we were supposed to meet. We were supposed to find each other." He reached out. His hand found hers. He held it gently, carefully, like holding something precious. "Nothing is coincidence, Clara," he said softly. "Sometimes God writes in Braille. Sometimes he guides us in the darkness, and he brought us together for a reason." Clara looked down at his hand holding hers. Tears fell onto their joined fingers. "My father loved this place," she whispered. "He died trying to save it, and my father helped him build it," Edward said. "Which means this diner belongs to both our families. It always has." Something shifted in that moment. Something sacred. Something beautiful. The grief didn't disappear, but it transformed. It became something else. Something that felt like hope. "I'm going to fix this," Edward said firmly. "I promise you, Clara. I will fix this." Clara looked up at him. Really looked at him. And for the first time since she learned about the sale, she saw something other than anger. She saw faith. She saw determination. She saw a man who meant what he said. "Do you believe in miracles?" Edward asked quietly. Clara thought about her father. About the piano. About little Lucy saying, "We don't need eyes to see beauty." About Edward walking into her diner that first day. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I do." Edward smiled. That rare, beautiful smile. "Then let's pray for one together." And there, in the small maple diner, surrounded by old tables and the smell of coffee, two broken people held hands and prayed. They prayed for truth, for justice, for redemption. They prayed for a miracle. And somewhere in heaven, two fathers who had once built a dream together smiled down on their children. The circle was closing. The story was coming full circle. And God was writing in Braille. Edward made a phone call. Just one. His voice was cold, hard, absolutely uncompromising. "Peter, come to Maple Diner, now." "Sir, I'm in the middle of—" "Now, Peter, or I will have you arrested for fraud." Silence on the other end. Then, "I'll be there in 20 minutes." Edward hung up. He turned to Clara and Mary Lou, who had come out from the kitchen when she heard voices. "He's coming," Edward said. "And when he gets here, I want the truth. All of it." Mary Lou nodded firmly. "Then he'll get it. That snake has been lying for too long." Word spread fast. Faster than fast. Within 15 minutes the diner was packed. Everyone in Maplewood had come. They wanted to see what would happen. They wanted justice. Mrs. Henderson stood by the door. Old Tom sat at the counter. Sarah held her twin babies. Lucy sat with Buddy at her feet, her small face serious and determined. The whole town had come to witness what happened to their beloved diner. Exactly 20 minutes later, a sleek black car pulled up outside. Peter Walsh stepped out. He was wearing an expensive suit. His hair was perfect. His smile was practiced. But his eyes were nervous. Very nervous. He walked into the diner. The bell rang. Ding, ding. Every single person turned to look at him. The room was silent, hostile, cold. Peter swallowed hard. This wasn't good. This wasn't good at all. "Mr. Grant," he said smoothly, "you wanted to see me?" Edward stood up. His face was like stone. "Sit down, Peter." "I'd prefer to stand." I said sit down. Peter sat. His confidence was cracking, crumbling. "Explain to me what you did," Edward said. His voice was steel, pure steel. "Explain how my signature ended up on a sale contract I never authorized." Peter forced a smile. "Sir, everything was completely legal. I simply executed your wishes. You signed the documents yourself. I merely acted on your behalf as your attorney." "Liar." Clara stepped forward. Her eyes blazed. "You're a liar." Peter turned to her dismissively. "I don't know who you are, young lady, but this is a private conversation." "I know exactly who you are," Clara interrupted. Her voice was strong, powerful. "You're the man who made a phone call 3 days ago, right here, at this counter." Peter's face went white. I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do." Clara walked closer. "You were sitting right there, table 3. I was refilling coffee." "You thought I wasn't listening, but I was." The room was dead silent. Everyone leaned forward, listening, watching. "You said, and I remember every single word you said, the old man can't see the contracts anyway. Just forge the signature. He'll never know. We split the commission 50-50, and the diner disappears." Peter's mouth opened, then closed. No words came out. "You said," Clara continued, her voice gaining strength, "that stupid blind fool trusts me completely. This will be the easiest money I ever made." Gasps filled the room. Edward's hands clenched into fists. "You called him a fool," Clara said. Tears streamed down her face. "You called a good man a fool. You betrayed his trust. You stole from him. You destroyed people's lives for money." Peter stood up quickly. "This is absurd. You're making this up. You have no proof." "Oh, but we do." Mary Lou marched out from the kitchen. In her hands were papers. Old papers. She slammed them down on the table. "I never trusted you," Mary Lou said fiercely. "Not from the first day I met you. So I kept copies. Copies of everything." She spread the papers out. "These are the original documents. The real ones. Before you changed them." Edward leaned forward. "Read them, Clara. Read them out loud." Clara picked up the papers. Her hands shook, but her voice was clear. "Property deed, Maple Diner Building. Originally purchased by William Grant and Thomas Evans in partnership. 1995. She paused, swallowed. Property transferred to Grant Holdings after Thomas Evans's death. with provision that the Evans family maintains right of first purchase should the property ever be sold. The silence was deafening. Right of first purchase, Edward repeated slowly, which means Clara should have been offered the property before anyone else. But she wasn't, Mary Lou said. Because he never told you that clause existed. Peter's face was gray, ashen. He looked like he might be sick. So let me understand this correctly, Edward said, his voice dangerously quiet. My father and Clara's father built this diner together. When her father died, the property came to me. But there was a legal protection for her family. And you hid it. You forged my signature. You sold the property illegally. All for money. Peter stammered. It was just business. Just business? Edward roared. His voice shook the walls. You destroyed this woman's home. You betrayed my trust. You stole from both our families. Peter backed toward the door. I can explain. Explain to the police, Mary Lou shouted. Explain to a judge, Old Tom yelled. Get out of our town, Mrs. Henderson cried. Peter turned and ran. Actually ran. He bolted for the door. But the entire town was blocking it. A wall of angry citizens, righteous citizens. They parted slowly, glaring at him with disgust. Peter stumbled outside. His fancy car was surrounded. People booed, hissed. Some threw napkins. Others just shook their heads in disappointment. Shame, someone yelled. Thief. Liar. Peter scrambled into his car and drove away. Fast as he could, his tail between his legs like the coward he was. Inside the diner, Edward stood perfectly still. His chest heaved, his hands trembled. Clara, he said quietly. She turned to him. Tears ran down her face. But they weren't sad tears anymore. They were something else. Something that looked like relief. I bought this building, Edward said slowly. Years ago, when your father died and the bank foreclosed. I didn't know. I never knew. But now I understand. He reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out papers, folded papers. I had my real lawyer, my honest lawyer, draw these up this morning. He held them out to Clara. His hand shook. These are the new property deeds. For Maple Diner. They're in your name, Clara Evans. This building belongs to you. It always should have. Clara's hands flew to her mouth. What? No, I can't. Yes, you can. You must. Edward's voice was firm, but gentle, so gentle. This was your father's dream, our father's dream, and I'm giving it back to where it belongs. Clara couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. She just stared at the papers. Take it, Edward whispered. Please, let me do this one thing right. Clara reached out with trembling hands. She took the papers, the deed, the proof that Maple Diner was hers, was home. And then she did something no one expected. She threw her arms around Edward Grant and hugged him so tight. The entire diner erupted. Cheers, applause, crying, laughing. Lucy jumped up and down. The House of Light is saved. The House of Light is saved. Mary Lou sobbed into her apron. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you. Edward stood frozen for a moment. Then slowly, carefully, he wrapped his arms around Clara. He held her close, and he cried. He cried tears of redemption, of forgiveness, of something that felt like love. Thank you, Clara whispered into his shoulder. Thank you for saving my home. No, Edward whispered back. Thank you for saving me. And in that moment, surrounded by cheering townspeople and the smell of coffee and the golden afternoon light streaming through the windows, two families became one again. The circle was complete. Justice had been served, and God smiled. The applause died down. The cheering stopped. But the emotion in the room remained. Thick, heavy, beautiful. Edward reached into his pocket. His fingers found what he was looking for, a small set of keys. The keys to Maple Diner. He held them out toward Clara. These are yours, he said quietly. Clara stared at the keys. They dangled from Edward's fingers, catching the afternoon light. They were simple keys, old keys, but they represented everything. Home, legacy, her father's dream. The Maple Diner is yours again, Edward said firmly. Clara shook her head. Tears streamed down her face. No, I can't accept this, Mr. Grant. Edward, he corrected gently. Edward, she whispered, I can't take this. It's too much. You're giving me everything. The building, the business, my entire home. This is charity, and I can't. Stop. Edward's voice was firm but kind. This is not charity, Clara. This is justice. But your father built this place, Edward continued. His voice grew stronger with every word. My father helped him. When your father died, this should have been yours. The bank stole it. My company bought it without knowing the truth. I'm not giving you anything. I'm returning what should never have been taken in the first place. Clara covered her face with her hands and sobbed. Deep, shaking sobs. Mary Lou wrapped her arms around her. Take them, honey. Take what's rightfully yours. Slowly, Clara reached out. Her trembling fingers closed around the keys. They felt warm, solid, real. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you so much. Edward smiled. No, thank you, for reminding me what it means to be human. The news spread through Maplewood like wildfire. Maple Diner was saved. Clara owned it. The whole town erupted with joy. Within hours, everyone came together to plan a celebration. A grand reopening. Mrs. Henderson made a banner. Old Tom brought his guitar. Sarah's twins wore matching dresses, and Lucy brought red ribbon. For the ribbon cutting, she announced proudly. The day of the celebration was perfect. Sunny, clear, beautiful. Tables were set up outside. Mary Lou cooked for days. Pies, cakes, fried chicken, everything delicious. The whole town gathered. Everyone came to witness the miracle. When Edward arrived, people clapped. Clara rushed to greet him. You came. I wouldn't miss this, he said, smiling. Lucy stood at the front door, holding big scissors. The red ribbon stretched across the entrance. Clara knelt beside her. Ready, sweetheart? Yes! Lucy's face glowed with pure joy. Then cut it. Snip. The ribbon fell. The crowd exploded with cheers. Everyone rushed inside. The diner sparkled. Fresh flowers adorned every table. The smell of apple pie filled the air. Mary Lou carried out a steaming pie. Some miracles taste like sugar and cinnamon. Everyone laughed and ate and celebrated. Then someone shouted, Music! We need music! Clara looked at the piano. Her heart jumped. Edward touched her shoulder. Will you play? He asked softly. I'm nervous. Then I'll play with you. They walked to the piano together. The crowd fell silent. They sat side by side. Their hands found the keys. Clara began, soft and gentle. Then Edward joined. His fingers were shaky at first, uncertain. But then they found the rhythm. Together they played. 2 people, 4 hands, 1 song. It wasn't perfect. Some notes were wrong. But it was real. It was honest. It was beautiful. Edward's voice broke as he played. You made me see, even without my eyes. You showed me what really matters. Clara glanced at him, tears flowing. And you gave me back my home. She squeezed his hand. He squeezed back. The music continued. The crowd wept. Mrs. Henderson dabbed her eyes. Old Tom wiped his face. Mary Lou whispered, Thank you, Jesus. Thank you for miracles. When the song ended, silence fell. Sacred silence. Then thunderous applause. Everyone cheered and cried. Lucy ran forward and hugged them both. That was so beautiful. Edward pulled her onto his lap. You were right, Lucy. We don't need eyes to see beauty. We just need hearts. Lucy grinned. See? I told you. Everyone laughed. The room filled with joy and light and love. Clara stood and faced the crowd. Thank you for believing in miracles. We believe in you, someone shouted. 3 cheers for Clara, Old Tom yelled. Hip, hip, hooray! The celebration continued. Music played. Children ran around. People danced and laughed. Edward and Clara stood together, watching with their hearts. The miracle wasn't getting my sight back, Edward said quietly. What was it? Clara asked. The miracle was feeling again, living again. He turned toward her. You did that. Clara's heart swelled. And you showed me that God can restore what was taken. Edward spoke again, his voice soft. Clara, I want to keep coming here, not just as a customer, as a friend, as someone who cares about you, very much. Clara's breath caught. I care about you too. Edward smiled. That beautiful, rare smile. The crowd applauded again, and the tears flowed like gentle rain. The miracle wasn't sight. The miracle was feeling. The miracle was love. 3 days later, Clara was organizing papers in the small office behind the diner. Old receipts, insurance documents, boxes she'd never fully sorted through. She pulled out an old leather folder, cracked and worn. She opened it carefully. Inside were documents from when the diner was first built, contracts, permits, building plans. Then she saw it, a yellowed piece of paper, official looking. At the top, partnership agreement. Clara's heart stopped. Grant and Evans, Partnership for the Establishment and Operation of Maple Diner. Signed this 15th day of June, 1995. Grant and Evans, her father's signature, Thomas Evans. Next to it, William Grant, Edward's father. Clara's hands shook as she kept reading. Equal partnership, joint ownership. In the event of either partner's passing, surviving partner agrees to support family of deceased. Tears blurred her vision. Her father and Edward's father had been partners, friends. They'd built this dream together. "Oh my God," Clara whispered. She grabbed the document and ran. Out of the office, through the diner, down the street. "Mary Lou, watch the shop!" she shouted. She found Edward on a bench in the town square, his cane beside him, his face turned toward the sun. "Edward," she gasped. He turned. "Clara? What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Everything's right." She dropped onto the bench. "Look, I found the original partnership agreement. Between our fathers." She pressed it into his hands. "Feel it." Edward's fingers traced the old paper. "Read it to me, please." Clara read every word, every promise their fathers had made to each other. When she finished, Edward sat in silence, his throat tight, his chest aching. "So Maple Diner was always meant to be ours," he said slowly. "Both our families. Together." "Yes." Clara laughed through tears. "This was never coincidence. You walking into the diner, me helping you, the connection we felt. It was all part of God's plan." Edward started crying, really crying. "My father never told me. If I had known." "He thought he had more time," Clara said gently. "Parents always do. And now they're both gone. But we're here." Clara squeezed his hand. "We can honor them. We can finish what they started." "Together?" Edward asked. "Together," Clara confirmed. They sat holding hands, crying and laughing. Two people brought together by tragedy, only to discover they'd been connected all along. "Love doesn't begin," Edward said softly. "It just wakes up." "What?" Clara smiled. "We didn't fall in love. We woke up to a love that was already there, planted by our fathers, watered by God, just waiting to bloom." Clara's heart swelled. "Edward Grant, are you saying you love me?" Edward turned toward her. "Yes, I love you, Clara Evans. I think I've loved you from the moment you described apple pie like it was a hug." Clara laughed, a pure, joyful laugh. "I love you too. From the moment you smiled for the first time." Their foreheads touched. They breathed together, just being together. Behind them, Maple Diner stood strong, the house of light, where two families became one, where miracles happened, where love awakened. That evening, they returned to the diner. Lucy was waiting with Buddy. When they told her the story, about the partnership, about their fathers, about the miracle, her face lit up like the sun. "I knew it," she shouted. "I knew you were meant to be together." She ran to the piano. Her small fingers found the keys, and she sang in her sweet voice. Amazing grace. How sweet the sound. Lucy's voice filled the diner, filled the street, filled the whole town. One by one, people came, drawn by the music, drawn by the light. They gathered. They stood shoulder to shoulder, and they sang together. The room glowed, not from light bulbs, but from something divine. Edward and Clara stood in the center, holding hands, tears streaming down their faces. "Now everyone can see," Lucy sang. "Now everyone can see." And it was true. Everyone could see, not with their eyes, but with their hearts. They saw love. They saw grace. They saw God's perfect plan. The Maple Diner, the house of light, shone brighter than ever, and the miracle was complete. The weeks that followed felt like watching spring arrive after a long, cold winter. Maple Diner came back to life, really came back to life. Every morning the door opened at 6 o'clock sharp. Ding ding. The little bell rang cheerfully. And people came. Oh, how they came. Mrs. Henderson for her morning coffee, old Tom for his pancakes, Sarah with her twin babies, students stopping by before school, workers grabbing breakfast on their way to the factory. The diner became what it had always been meant to be, a gathering place, a home, a sanctuary of warmth and kindness in a world that sometimes felt cold. Clara ran the place with quiet grace. She was there every single day, serving coffee, taking orders, wiping tables, smiling at everyone who walked through the door. She treated every customer like family, because that's what they were, family. And Edward? Edward was there too, not as an owner, not as a boss, just as someone who wanted to help. He couldn't see the coffee cups or read the menu or count the change, but he could do other things, beautiful things. He talked to the customers, really talked to them. He remembered their names, their stories, their struggles. When Mrs. Henderson's husband was sick, Edward sat with her for an hour, just listening. When old Tom needed help with his mortgage, Edward made some calls and sorted it out. When Sarah couldn't afford daycare, Edward quietly paid for it. "You don't have to do these things," Clara told him one afternoon. Edward smiled. "I know, but I want to. For the first time in my life, I'm not doing things because I have to. I'm doing them because they matter." Mary Lou watched it all from the kitchen. She was older now, slower. Her joints ached and her back hurt, but her heart was full. "I can rest now," she told Clara one evening. "The diner is in good hands, your hands. And that man of yours? He's good people, Clara. Real good people." Clara blushed. "He's not my man, Mary Lou." Mary Lou just laughed. "Oh, honey. Yes, he is. You just don't know it yet." Lucy came by every day after school. She would burst through the door with Buddy at her side, her backpack bouncing, her face bright with joy. "Miss Clara, Mr. Edward, I'm here." And she would go straight to the piano. Lucy had started giving music lessons, free lessons, to any child in Maplewood who wanted to learn. She couldn't see the keys, but she didn't need to. Her fingers knew where to go. Her heart knew what to play. Soon there were 5 children taking lessons, then 10, then 15. Every afternoon, the diner filled with the sound of children practicing scales and simple songs. Some played well, some played terribly, but all of them played with joy, pure joy. "Music isn't about being perfect," Lucy would tell them in her wise little voice. "Music is about feeling. If you feel it here," she pointed to her heart, "then your fingers will know what to do." Edward would sit nearby listening. Sometimes tears would run down his face, tears of gratitude, of wonder, of peace. "That little girl is changing the world," he told Clara, one piano lesson at a time. One day, Edward made an announcement. "I bought a house." Clara looked up from wiping the counter. "You did?" "Yes, the small one next door, Mrs. Patterson's old place." Clara's heart jumped. Next door? He was moving next door? "Why?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Edward smiled. "So I can hear the piano every morning. So I can smell Mary Lou's coffee. So I can be close to—" He paused. "Close to where I belong." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "Edward, is that okay?" he asked quietly. "Me being so close?" "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, it's more than okay." Edward moved in the following week. The house was small but perfect. He didn't need much, just a bed, a chair, a window that faced the diner. Every morning he would wake up to the sound of Clara opening the diner. He could hear her humming as she brewed the first pot of coffee. He could hear the scrape of chairs as she set up the tables. And he would smile, because he was home, really home. Clara would bring him breakfast every morning. "You don't have to do this," he would say. "I know," she would reply with a smile. "But I want to." They fell into a rhythm, a dance. He would come to the diner. She would serve him coffee. They would talk. They would laugh. They would sit together in comfortable silence. And slowly, quietly, without either of them fully realizing it, they fell deeper in love. Autumn arrived in Maplewood like a blessing. The trees turned gold and orange and red. The air grew crisp and cool. Leaves fell like confetti, covering the streets in a carpet of color. The diner looked beautiful, framed by autumn colors, like a painting, like something out of a dream. Clara's mother got better, really better. The medicine Edward quietly paid for worked wonders. Her cough disappeared. Her color returned. She could walk without getting tired. She could laugh without wheezing. "You did this," Clara told Edward one evening. They were sitting on the porch of his little house, watching the sunset. "Did what?" "You saved my mother's life." Edward shook his head. "The medicine saved her life. I just paid for it." "No." Clara took his hand. "You did more than that. You gave me hope. You showed me that good things can still happen, that miracles are real." Edward squeezed her hand. "You showed me the same thing, Clara. You showed me that darkness doesn't have to mean despair, that being blind doesn't mean being broken." They sat in silence, holding hands, watching the sky turn pink and purple and gold. The fear that had lived in Clara's heart for so long was gone, replaced by peace, by joy. by something that felt like coming home after a long journey. The past didn't hurt anymore. It had transformed into something sweet, a memory that made her smile instead of cry. Her father wasn't a source of pain anymore. He was a source of pride, of gratitude, of love. And the future? The future didn't seem scary anymore. It seemed bright, full of possibility, full of hope. For the first time in years, both Clara and Edward could see the future clearly, not with their eyes, but with their hearts. And what they saw was beautiful. 6 months passed like a beautiful dream, a dream neither of them wanted to wake up from. One morning, Clara arrived at the diner to find something new. A wooden sign hung above the entrance. She stepped back to read it. The words were carved in elegant script. Here, love served coffee to a man who learned to see again. Clara's hand flew to her mouth. Tears sprang to her eyes. Edward. Edward had done this. She found him inside, sitting at his usual table. "Did you see it?" he asked with a grin. "See it? Edward, it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect." "I wanted people to know," Edward said. "I wanted them to know what happened here, that miracles are real, that love can heal, that kindness changes everything." And the sign worked. Oh, how it worked. People started coming from other towns. Tourists. They would stop, read the sign, and come inside. They would take pictures. They would eat Mary Lou's pie. They would sit at the tables and feel the warmth. Some would leave notes, little pieces of paper tucked into a basket by the door. "This place saved my marriage. I found hope here when I had none. Thank you for reminding me that good people still exist." Clara and Edward read every single note, and they cried over most of them. Life settled into a beautiful routine. Every morning, Clara opened the diner. Every morning, Edward came for breakfast. Every afternoon, Lucy taught piano lessons to giggling children. Every evening, Mary Lou would count the register and say the same thing. "It's good to see good people win." Edward and Clara never made a big announcement. They didn't have a dramatic proposal or a fancy wedding. They simply became inseparable. Two people who fit together like pieces of a puzzle. They were discreet, quiet, but anyone who looked could see it. The way Edward's face lit up when Clara entered a room, the way Clara's hand always found his, the way they moved around each other like a dance they'd been practicing their whole lives. Peter Walsh was forgotten, completely forgotten. Nobody talked about him anymore. Nobody wondered where he went. Evil had a way of dissolving into dust when good stood strong against it. Lucy grew. She was 10 now, then 11. Her music lessons expanded. She started a small choir. She organized recitals. Children who never thought they could make music discovered they could. And it was all because of a blind little girl who believed that beauty didn't need eyes to be seen. Every Sunday, Lucy played piano during the diner's brunch service. She would play hymns, gospel songs, simple, beautiful melodies that made everyone stop talking and just listen. The room would fill with the smell of apple pie and maple syrup and coffee. Mary Lou would stand in the kitchen doorway with tears in her eyes. "This is what heaven looks like," she would whisper. One Sunday morning, sunlight streamed through the diner's windows. The light was golden, perfect. It painted halos on the coffee cups, made the silverware sparkle, turned everything it touched into something sacred. Edward sat at his table. Clara was across the room laughing with Mrs. Henderson about something. Her laugh, that beautiful musical laugh, filled the air. Edward smiled. He couldn't see her, but he could hear her. He could feel her presence, and that was enough, more than enough. "Now I see," he murmured to himself. "Now I finally see." Not with his eyes, never with his eyes, but with something deeper, something better, with his heart, with his soul, with the part of him that had been asleep for so long and was now finally, beautifully awake. Outside, autumn leaves fell slowly. They drifted down like blessings, like prayers being answered. The town of Maplewood continued its simple, beautiful existence. People went to work. Children went to school. Life went on. But in Maple Diner, in that small, sacred space, something extraordinary had happened, and continued to happen every single day. Two broken people had found each other. Two families had become one. A community had witnessed a miracle. And love, real, honest, powerful love, had won. The camera would pull back if this were a movie. It would rise up, showing the diner from above, the golden light, the falling leaves, the simple town continuing its simple life. It would show Clara and Edward inside together smiling. It would show Lucy at the piano, Mary Lou in the kitchen, customers laughing and eating and being together, and then the screen would fade, gently, peacefully, because the story was over. But also, it was just beginning. The miracle wasn't that Edward regained his sight. The miracle was that he learned to see differently, better, more truly. The miracle wasn't that Clara got her diner back. The miracle was that she got her heart back, her joy back, her faith back. The miracle was human, simple, real. Two people choosing kindness, choosing love, choosing to believe that good things can happen to good people. And because it was human, because it was real, because it was rooted in love and sacrifice and grace, it was eternal, the end, but also the beginning, always the beginning.